The red warning lights flashed across the command center of the Galactic Council station. Commander Zix Thala stared at the holographic display with growing alarm. Another monitoring post had gone silent. That made 17 in the past 3. "Rotations! Show me the last transmission from Station Kappa 7, she ordered, her 4 arms moving swiftly across the control panels. The technician, a young Vorthan with nervous clicking sounds coming from his throat, brought up the recording. Static filled the air, then a panicked voice broke through. "This is Kappa 7. The seals are breaking. I repeat, the containment seals are—" The transmission cut to silence. Zix Thala felt a chill run down her spine. The containment seals. Every member of the council knew about them, but they were ancient history. Relics from a war fought 10,000 years ago, when the galaxy was young and the council was still learning how to deal with dangerous species. "Sir, we're receiving." "Another report," the technician said. "Station Delta 9 reports strange energy readings before they lost contact." The massive view screen switched to show a star map of the Outer Rim territories. Red dots marked the locations of silent stations, forming a pattern that made Zix Thala's stomach drop. The pattern was moving inward, toward the heart of Council. "Space. Contact the High Assembly immediately," she commanded. "Tell them we have a Code Black situation." Within hours, the emergency session of the Galactic Council convened. Representatives from 12 major species filled the Great Chamber, their various forms creating a rainbow of colors and shapes. The ethereal collective floated in their energy, forms, while the massive Crotar delegates took up entire sections with their rock-like bodies. High Chancellor Morden, an ancient Zilithian whose crystalline body sparkled with age, called for order. "We have gathered to discuss the situation in the Outer Rim. Commander Zix Thala will brief us." Zix Thala stepped forward, her report appearing on screens throughout the chamber. "Honorable delegates, 17 monitoring stations have gone dark in the past week. These are not random attacks. The pattern suggests a systematic dismantling of our containment network." A murmur ran through the assembly. The containment network was supposed to be impenetrable, designed by their ancestors to hold back something, so dangerous that destruction wasn't enough. "What could break containment seals that have held for 10 millennia?" asked Representative Kethvar, a proud warrior from the hegemony species. "That's what worries me," Zix Thala replied. "Our ancestors didn't build those seals to keep something in. They built them to keep something contained while it changed." The chamber fell silent. Every species in the council knew the stories, though most treated them as myths. Long ago, their predecessors had encountered a species so violent, so unpredictable, that they couldn't be allowed to spread across the galaxy. But rather than commit genocide, the ancient council had chosen a different path. They sealed entire star systems, trapping the dangerous species in a pocket of space-time, hoping that isolation would teach them wisdom. "Surely whatever was sealed away must have died out by now," suggested a Vorthon delegate. 10,000 years is a long time." "Our monitoring equipment suggests otherwise," Zix Thala said grimly. "Before the stations went dark, they detected organized fleet movements, ships using technology we don't recognize." High Chancellor Mordoon's crystal body dimmed with worry. "Show us the recordings." The holographic display filled with grainy images from the last functioning sensors. Dark shapes moved through space, too distant to make out clearly, but their formation was unmistakable. Military precision, coordinated movements, purpose. "These are not the actions of a dying civilization," Kethvar observed. "If anything, they appear more organized than our own fleets." "There's more," Zix Thala continued. "The few stations that managed to get closer scans detected something disturbing. The ships don't match any known design philosophy. They're using principles of engineering that our best scientists say shouldn't work." She brought up detailed scans of hull fragments found drifting near one of the destroyed stations. The metal looked organic, flowing like liquid while maintaining rigid structure. Energy readings showed power sources that seemed to draw from multiple dimensions. "By the eternal light," whispered a ethereal delegate. "What did our ancestors seal away?" "According to the archives, they called themselves humans," Zixthala said. "The records describe them as a young species, barely past their first space flights. Aggressive, territorial, but showing signs of intelligence. The decision was made to contain them until they could evolve past their violent nature. And now they're free," Kethvar said, his warrior instincts already calculating threats. "Not free," Zixthala corrected. "From what we can tell, they're breaking free. The seals are failing one by one, but not randomly. They're being systematically destroyed from the inside. The implications hit the assembly like a physical blow. If the humans were breaking the seals from within, it meant they had not only survived 10,000 years of isolation, but had grown strong enough to challenge technology built by the combined wisdom of 12 advanced civilizations." "How long? Until they reach inhabited systems?" asked the High Chancellor. "At their current rate of progress, 6 months," Zixthala replied. "Maybe less if they accelerate." The chamber erupted in worried chatter. Representatives demanded action, suggested strategies, called for military mobilization. But underneath all the noise was a growing fear that none of them wanted to voice. Kethvar stood, his massive frame commanding attention. "I volunteer to lead a reconnaissance mission. We need to know what we're dealing with." "Absolutely not," declared the ethereal delegate. "If these humans are as dangerous as the archives suggest, sending a military leader will only provoke them." "Then what do you suggest?" Kethvar growled. "That we wait for them to come to us?" "Perhaps we should try to communicate," suggested another voice. "Our ancestors sealed them away, but that doesn't mean we can't find a peaceful solution." "Hi." Chancellor Morden raised a crystalline hand for silence. "We will prepare for all possibilities. Military readiness, yes, but also diplomatic options. And we need to understand what 10,000 years of isolation has done to them." As the assembly debated, Zixthala studied the star charts again. The pattern of destruction was too clean, too efficient. These weren't the random attacks of an angry species breaking free. They were the calculated moves of something that had been planning this moment for a very long time. "Sir," her technician's voice crackled through her communicator, "we're receiving a transmission from Scout Ship Gamma. They've reached the edge of the containment zone." "Put it through." The voice that came through was tight with fear. "Command, this is Scout Gamma. I'm not sure how to describe this. The containment barrier isn't just broken. It's been carefully dismantled. The energy patterns suggest it was taken apart from the inside, piece by piece, over centuries." Zixthala felt her heart skip a beat. "Are you detecting any human ships?" "Negative, sir. But there's something else. We're picking up artificial structures, massive ones. They're built into the asteroids and dead planets throughout the sealed zone. It looks like they turned their prison into a fortress." The transmission ended abruptly. Zixthala tried to re-establish contact, but Scout Gamma was gone. Another red dot appeared on her display. In the great chamber, the debates continued, but Zixthala was no longer listening. She stared at the expanding pattern of destruction and realized that everything they thought they knew about the situation was wrong. The humans weren't escaping from their prison. They had already escaped. What they were doing now was something far more terrifying. They were coming home. The emergency excavation of the sealed archives took 3 days. Teams of archaeologists and historians worked around the clock, breaking open data vaults that hadn't been accessed in millennia. The Grand Library of Zelos hummed with activity, as ancient storage crystals were carefully extracted and analyzed. Dr. Yithara, the Council's chief historian, stood before a massive crystalline archive that glowed with stored memories. Her tentacles moved delicately across the activation sequences, bringing 10,000-year-old records to life. The first contact reports are fragmentary, she announced to the assembled research team. But what we're finding is disturbing. The holographic display showed primitive spacecraft, crude by current standards but showing remarkable ingenuity. The ships bore the markings of the human species, moving through space with a confidence that surprised the ancient observers. According to these records, first contact occurred in what the humans called the year 2387 of their calendar. Dr. Yathara continued. A council exploration fleet encountered human colonies in 17 different star systems. Admiral Kethvar, who had insisted on observing the investigation, leaned forward. 17 systems? That's impressive expansion for such a young species. That's what worried our ancestors, Dr. Yathara replied, bringing up tactical analysis from the ancient files. Look at this growth pattern. The display showed human expansion over just 2 centuries. Starting from a single world, they had spread like fire across the stars. Not randomly, but with purpose and planning. They built defensive networks, established trade routes, and showed an understanding of galactic politics that shouldn't have been possible for such a young civilization. The council observers noted several concerning traits, Dr. Yathara read from the files. Humans showed exceptional adaptability, learning new technologies and integrating them into their society within years rather than the typical centuries. They formed alliances quickly but also showed a willingness to fight when threatened. That doesn't sound unreasonable, commented Dr. Zephys, a Vorthan scientist. Many species show similar traits during early expansion. Read the tactical assessments, Kethvar suggested grimly. Dr. Yathara pulled up military reports from the ancient files. The text made the research team uncomfortable. Human military doctrine is based on what they call total war. When threatened, they mobilize their entire civilization for conflict. They don't have separate military and civilian populations in the traditional sense. Every human is trained for war from childhood. The files showed battle footage from skirmishes between humans and pirates in the Outer Rim. What shocked the ancient observers wasn't the humans' weapons or ships, but their tactics. They fought with a creativity and viciousness that made seasoned council military leaders uncomfortable. Look at this engagement, Kethvar pointed to a particular file. Human ships surrounded by superior forces. Instead of surrendering, they ram their vessels into the enemy fleet while broadcasting their locations to other human forces. The footage showed exactly that. Human ships, damaged and outnumbered, turned themselves into guided missiles rather than face capture. But before doing so, they transmitted detailed tactical data to their allies. They call it acceptable losses, Dr. Yathara read. Humans seem willing to sacrifice significant portions of their population to achieve strategic objectives. More files revealed the depth of human military thinking. They didn't just fight with their ships and weapons. They fought with their economics, turning trade routes into supply lines. They fought with their culture, using art and entertainment to spread their influence. They fought with their technology, developing new innovations at a pace that made other species nervous. The final decision came after what the humans called the proxy wars, Dr. Yathara continued. Several council member species hired human mercenaries for conflicts with neighboring civilizations. The files showed the results. Human mercenary companies didn't just win battles. They revolutionized warfare wherever they went. Traditional siege tactics became obsolete. Established military doctrines crumbled. Within 50 years, half the galaxy was trying to hire human soldiers while the other half feared them. The council realized they had a problem, Dr. Yathara explained. Humans weren't just another species. They were a catalyst that was changing the entire galactic balance of power. Admiral Kethvar studied the strategic summaries. So they decided to eliminate the humans? No, Dr. Yathara said, her voice heavy with the weight of history. They decided to save them. She brought up the final council debates from 10,000 years ago. The record showed a civilization struggling with an impossible choice. The humans weren't evil. They weren't attempting to conquer the galaxy. They were simply being themselves, and that nature was incompatible with galactic peace. Council member Thexlon of the Ethereal Collective made the final argument. Dr. Yathara read. He said, "They are children playing with nuclear fire, not malicious, but dangerous beyond measure. If we destroy them, we commit genocide against an innocent species. If we leave them alone, they will eventually drag the entire galaxy into war." There is a third option, the containment protocol. Dr. Yathara pulled up the technical specifications, and the research team stared in awe at the complexity. The ancient council had built a prison that existed partially outside normal space-time. Not a simple barrier, but a pocket dimension where the sealed systems would exist in temporal isolation. The theory was that time would move differently inside the containment zone, Dr. Yathara explained. Thousands of years would pass outside, while only decades passed inside. The humans would have time to evolve, to mature, to grow beyond their violent nature. But the monitoring stations detected active civilizations inside the zone, Dr. Zephys pointed out. That suggests time wasn't moving differently at all. Dr. Yathara nodded grimly. The containment protocol was more sophisticated than we initially understood. It was designed to adapt based on what was inside. If the sealed species showed signs of peaceful development, time would accelerate, allowing them to develop wisdom quickly. If they remained violent, she didn't need to finish. The implication was clear. If the humans had remained unchanged, time inside the containment zone would have moved at normal speed, giving them 10 full millennia to develop in isolation. 10,000 years, Admiral Kethvar said quietly. What could a species accomplish in 10,000 years of forced isolation? The research team worked through the night, analyzing every fragment of data about human capabilities. What they found painted a picture that made them increasingly uncomfortable. Humans didn't just adapt to new situations. They transformed them. They didn't just use technology. They reimagined it. Look at this psychological profile, Dr. Zephys said, pulling up behavioral analysis from the archives. Humans show what the analysts called catastrophic growth patterns. Under pressure, they don't just improve existing capabilities. They develop entirely new ones. The files showed examples. When faced with resource shortages, humans didn't just ration supplies. They invented new methods of production. When confronted with superior weapons, they didn't just build better guns. They changed the nature of warfare itself. There's something else, Dr. Yathara said, her voice troubled. The containment zone wasn't empty. Our ancestors included 17 human colonies with a total population of nearly 2 billion people. But they also included something else. She brought up the final files, marked with warning symbols that made the display flicker ominously. They included Earth, the human homeworld, with 12 billion inhabitants. The research team fell silent. 14 billion humans, sealed away with all their technology, all their knowledge, all their aggressive creativity, given 10,000 years to develop without any external constraints or limitations. The monitoring stations detected massive energy signatures from inside the zone, Dr. Yathara continued. Artificial structures the size of moons, energy sources that shouldn't be possible, and ship designs that seem to violate basic physics. Admiral Kethvar stood up slowly, his face grim. We need to inform the High Council immediately. Whatever our ancestors sealed away, it's not the same species that went in. As the research team packed their findings, Dr. Yathara made one final discovery. A personal log from the council member who had overseen the containment protocol. His final entry, recorded just before the seals were activated, contained a single disturbing line. We have given them the greatest gift possible. We have given them a common enemy. I pray to whatever gods exist that we have made the right choice. The timestamp showed the entry was made exactly 10,000 years ago. Today, the first sign that something was wrong came from the hegemony's primary trade hub on Valoris Prime. Ships began arriving late, if they arrived at all. Cargo manifests didn't match what was actually delivered. Communication delays stretched from hours to days to complete silence. Port Administrator Kelksoth stared at his displays in growing confusion. "How does a ship lose 3 days' worth of cargo and not remember picking it up?" he asked his assistant. "It's not just one ship, sir," the assistant replied nervously. "We've had 17 vessels arrive with similar problems. Missing time, missing memories, missing cargo." Across the galaxy, similar reports flooded into Council headquarters. Trade routes that had operated smoothly for centuries suddenly became unreliable. Ships would depart on schedule but arrive weeks late, their crews insisting they had made normal time. Navigation computers showed impossible readings. Star charts didn't match what sensors were detecting. Admiral Kethvar stood in the Council's military command center, surrounded by reports that made no sense. Red markers covered the tactical display, each one representing a ship, station, or facility that had experienced anomalies. "It's not random," he told Commander Zixthala. "Look at the pattern. The red markers formed a web across Council space, but it wasn't chaotic. Major trade routes, key communication relays, important military installations, all experiencing problems that seemed unrelated, but followed a disturbing logic. Someone is mapping our infrastructure, Zixthala realized. Testing our response times, studying our procedures. But there are no human ships in Council space, Kethvar pointed out. Our sensors would detect them. Would they? Zixthala asked grimly. The answer came 3 days later from the medical station orbiting Zephyria. Dr. Helixson, the station's chief physician, made a discovery that sent shockwaves through the Council. The patient came in for routine genetic therapy, Dr. Helixson reported via emergency transmission. Standard procedure for Vorthon longevity treatment, but when I ran the genetic scan, I found something impossible. The holographic display showed DNA patterns that looked perfectly Vorthon at first glance, but deeper analysis revealed subtle modifications, changes so small they would be undetectable without specific testing. This isn't natural evolution, Dr. Helixson continued. Someone has artificially modified this individual's genetics to mimic Vorthon physiology while maintaining an underlying structure that's completely different. Admiral Kethvar leaned forward. Are you saying this person isn't actually Vorthon? I'm saying this person is human, Dr. Helixson replied. Modified to pass as Vorthon, but genetically human at the cellular level. The implications hit the command center like a physical blow. If humans could modify themselves to pass as other species, they could be anywhere. They could be anyone. How long would such modifications take to develop? Commander Zixthala asked. With our current technology? Centuries of research, Doctor, Helixson said. But the work I'm seeing here is far beyond our capabilities. They're not just changing surface appearance. They're rewriting fundamental biological processes while maintaining human cognitive patterns. Within hours, secret genetic screening began across Council space. The results were terrifying. In major population centers, between 3 and 7% of the inhabitants showed signs of genetic modification, not aliens pretending to be other species, but humans pretending to be aliens. They've been living among us for decades, Zixthala reported to the emergency council session. Maybe longer. Integrated into our society, our economy, our government. Representative Mordak of the Krotar delegation, his rocky features twisted with anger, slammed a massive fist on his speaking platform. This is an invasion. They've infiltrated our worlds without declaring war. Have they? Asked an ethereal delegate, her energy form flickering with thought. What hostile actions have these infiltrators taken? The question hung in the air because the answer was uncomfortable. The humans living among them had been model citizens. They paid taxes, followed laws, contributed to society. Many held important positions in research, trade, and even government. If they were spies, they were the most productive spies in galactic history. The timing can't be coincidental, Admiral Kethvar pointed out. The containment seals began failing just as infrastructure problems started appearing throughout Council space. That was when the real attacks began. They started small. Communication. Satellites would experience temporary malfunctions. Power grids would fluctuate for a few minutes before returning to normal. Navigation beacons would broadcast slightly incorrect information for brief periods. But the small problems added up to massive disruptions. Ships arrived at wrong destinations. Military response times increased. Trade shipments got lost in bureaucratic confusion that seemed to generate itself. They're not trying to destroy our infrastructure, Zix Thala realized during one of the daily briefings. They're making it unreliable, creating doubt in our systems. The psychological impact was worse than direct warfare would have been. Council. Citizens began to distrust their own technology. Ship captains started using old-fashioned navigation methods. Military commanders questioned their sensor readings. The efficient machine of galactic civilization began to grind to a halt under the weight of uncertainty. Then the impossible things started happening. The first report came from the Zilithian crystal farms on Luminos. Workers arrived one morning to find their energy crystals glowing with patterns that shouldn't exist. The crystals were growing faster than normal, developing new properties that violated known physics. It's like someone rewrote the fundamental rules governing crystal formation, the chief engineer reported. The energy output has increased by 300%, but our equipment says it's impossible. Similar reports flooded in from across Council space. Manufacturing facilities found their production rates mysteriously improved overnight. Agricultural worlds discovered their crops growing in ways that defied biological understanding. Research stations detected energy readings that their instruments insisted couldn't exist. They're not attacking our technology, Dr. Yathara concluded after analyzing the reports. They're improving it, but in ways that make us question everything we think we know about science. The most disturbing incident occurred on the military fortress world of Drakmor. Admiral Kethvar arrived personally to investigate reports of impossible fortifications. What he found made him question his own sanity. The fortress's defensive barriers, which had protected the planet for 2,000 years, had been modified, but not damaged, enhanced. The shields now repelled attacks that should have been able to penetrate them, using energy principles that Council science said were theoretical at best. "Sir," the fortress commander reported nervously, "the modifications appeared overnight. Our security systems detected no intrusions, no unauthorized access. The changes just manifested." Kethvar studied the technical readouts, his warrior's mind trying to grasp what he was seeing. "Who has the authorization codes for these systems?" "Only Council Military Command and—" The commander hesitated. "And Chief Engineer Thainrix, who's been with us for 15 years. They found Chief Engineer Thainrix in his workshop, calmly working on what appeared to be a standard power coupling. When Kethvar confronted him, the engineer looked up with perfectly normal Krotar features and smiled. "I was wondering when you'd figure it out," Thainrix said in a voice that was definitely not Krotar. "Though I have to admit you took longer than we expected." The genetic scanner confirmed what Kethvar already knew. Thainrix was human, modified to pass as Krotar, and had been serving faithfully as the fortress's chief engineer for 15 years. "Why?" Kethvar asked, his hand resting on his weapon but knowing it was probably useless. "Because someone had to fix things," Thainrix replied simply. "Your defensive systems had 17 critical vulnerabilities. Your power grid was operating at 60% efficiency. Your life support systems were going to fail within the next decade." Kethvar stared at him. "You've been sabotaging our equipment?" "I've been maintaining it," Thainrix corrected. "Your people are excellent warriors, Admiral, but terrible engineers. Do you know how many Council installations I've prevented from exploding over the past 15 years? The casual revelation that humans had been secretly maintaining council infrastructure for decades hit Kethvar like a physical blow. These weren't saboteurs or invaders. They were custodians, keeping galactic civilization running while its owners remained oblivious to how close everything was to falling apart. "The containment is failing," Kethvar said. "Your people are breaking free." Thanorix nodded calmly. "The containment failed decades ago, Admiral. We've been free for quite some time. We've just been busy." Busy with what? Thanorix gestured around the workshop, at the improved systems, at the enhanced technology that surrounded them. "Getting ready," he said simply. "Your ancestors sealed us away to protect the galaxy from us. We spent 10,000 years learning how to protect the galaxy instead." As if to emphasize his point, alarms began sounding throughout the fortress. Not attack warnings, but maintenance alerts. Systems throughout the facility were powering down for scheduled upgrades that hadn't been. The message appeared everywhere at once. On every screen in council space, from personal communicators to massive public displays, the same simple text materialized. "We forgive you." Below it, coordinates for a neutral system on the galactic rim and a timestamp indicating when humanity would be waiting. High Chancellor Mordun stared at his personal display, his crystalline form flickering with confusion and fear. Around him, the council chamber erupted in chaos as representatives received the same message on their devices. "How is this possible?" demanded Representative Kreshatar of the Vorthon delegation. "Our communication networks are secured with quantum encryption. Nothing should be able to access them all simultaneously." Commander Zixthala studied her tactical displays with growing unease. "Sir, we're detecting the same message being broadcast from our own transmission arrays. Somehow they've turned our entire communication network into their delivery system." "We forgive you." Admiral Kethvar read the message aloud, his voice heavy with implications. "They're not demanding surrender. They're offering forgiveness." The ethereal delegate's energy form pulsed with agitation. "For what? We haven't attacked them. We haven't even had formal contact." Dr. Yithara, who had been studying the historical records, looked up from her datapad. "They're forgiving us for sealing them away, for the containment protocol, for 10,000 years of imprisonment." The weight of that realization settled over the chamber like a physical presence. The humans weren't angry about their captivity. They weren't seeking revenge for millennia of isolation. They were offering forgiveness for one of the greatest crimes in galactic history. "It could be a trap," suggested Admiral Kethvar, though his voice lacked conviction. "With respect, Admiral," High Chancellor Mordun replied, "if they wanted to trap us, they wouldn't need to lure us anywhere. They've demonstrated they can access our most secure systems at will." The debate that followed lasted 3 days. Representatives argued about the wisdom of responding, the potential for ambush, the implications of accepting what amounted to an invitation from a species they had imprisoned. But underneath all the political discussion was a simple truth that no one wanted to voice. They were terrified. In the end, curiosity and diplomatic necessity won. A small delegation was assembled, led by High Chancellor Mordun himself, with Admiral Kethvar providing military oversight. Dr. Yithara joined to provide historical context, along with representatives from the major council species. The journey to the designated coordinates took 5 days using the council's fastest ships. As they approached the neutral system, their sensors began detecting energy signatures that made their instruments question reality. "Sir," the ship's science officer reported, her voice tight with disbelief, "I'm reading massive artificial structures throughout this system. They're not showing up on our star charts because they weren't here last week." The view screen activated, and the delegation fell silent. The system had been transformed. What had been empty space now contained structures that defied comprehension. Massive rings of what appeared to be crystallized light surrounded the system's star, harvesting energy on a scale that should have been impossible. Planets had been moved into perfect orbital alignment. Artificial worlds, each one larger than most council homeworlds, drifted in formations that created their own gravitational harmony. "By the eternal light," whispered the ethereal representative. "They built all of this in 5 days?" "No," Dr. Yathara said, studying her readings. "These structures are old, very old. They've been here for centuries, maybe millennia. They were just hidden. As their ship approached the coordinates, space itself seemed to ripple, and suddenly they were no longer alone. A fleet materialized. Around them, ships appearing from folded space with technologies that bent the laws of physics. But these weren't warships. Each vessel was clearly a habitat, a mobile city containing billions of lives. Gardens were visible through transparent sections, waterfalls cascaded between levels, and what appeared to be entire ecosystems thrived within artificial environments that seemed more alive than most natural worlds. The largest vessel approached, its size making the council ship seem like a toy by comparison. It wasn't threatening. If anything, it radiated a sense of peaceful welcome that was almost overwhelming. "Council delegation," a voice spoke directly into their minds, bypassing all communication technology. "You are invited aboard. We have much to discuss." The docking procedure was like nothing they had experienced. Rather than mechanical connections, their ship was gently embraced by what appeared to be living metal that formed a perfect environmental seal. They walked through corridors that seemed to grow around them, walls that shifted to accommodate different species' needs for atmosphere, gravity, and lighting. The human who met them looked remarkably ordinary. Average height, unremarkable features, wearing simple clothing that seemed to be made from materials that shifted between different textures and colors as the light changed. But there was something about her presence that made reality feel more solid around her, as if her very existence was a stabilizing force. "I am Sarah Chen," she said, speaking in perfect council standard, though her lips didn't quite match the words they were hearing. "I speak for humanity in this matter, though that's a bit of an oversimplification." "You speak for 14 billion. People?" Admiral Kethvar asked, his military training making him assess potential threats, even as his instincts told him weapons would be useless here. Sarah smiled, and the expression contained depths of experience that made her appear both young and ancient simultaneously. "I speak for considerably more than 14 billion, Admiral. We've been busy during our containment." She led them through the ship, and what they saw challenged every assumption they had about civilization, technology, and life itself. Children played in gardens where the plants sang lullabies. Engineers worked on projects that seemed to sculpt reality as much as matter. Artists created works that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. "Your population has grown significantly," Dr. Yathara observed, watching thousands of humans going about their daily lives in spaces that should have been able to hold hundreds at most. "Space is somewhat more flexible than your physics suggests," Sarah replied. "We've learned to make room." They arrived at a chamber that existed in impossible geometries, large enough to hold their entire delegation comfortably, while somehow remaining intimate enough for personal conversation. Sarah gestured for them to sit on chairs that formed themselves from the floor to perfectly accommodate each species' physiology. "You came because you wanted to understand what you're dealing with," Sarah said simply. "The answer is both simpler and more complex than you might expect." High Chancellor Morden leaned forward, his crystalline form resonating with curiosity. "What did the containment do to your people?" "It saved us," Sarah replied, and her words carried the weight of absolute sincerity. "Your ancestors were right about us, you know. We were violent, territorial, aggressive. We would have eventually torn the galaxy apart, probably taking ourselves with it. But isolation changed you. the ethereal representative asked. Isolation taught us, Sarah corrected. We had 10,000 years to face the truth about ourselves without external pressures or distractions. We learned that our aggressive nature wasn't a flaw to be suppressed. It was a tool to be understood and directed. The chamber filled with holographic images showing human development over the millennia. Not just technological advancement, but social, psychological, and spiritual evolution. Wars that ended not in victory but in understanding. Conflicts that transformed into collaborative problem-solving. Competition that became cooperation. We learned to fight entropy instead of each other, Sarah explained. To be aggressive in defense of life rather than in conquest of territory. To channel our territorial instincts into protecting entire ecosystems instead of claiming worlds. And now? Admiral Kethvar asked. Now we're ready to come home, Sarah said. Not to the galaxy we left, but to the galaxy we can help create. She waved her hand, and the chamber filled with projections of council space, but not as it currently existed. Instead, they saw what it could become, dying stars renewed with human technology, barren worlds blooming with carefully designed ecosystems, civilizations working together on projects that spanned galactic distances. We spent 10,000 years learning how to be worthy of the gift your ancestors gave us, Sarah continued. The gift of forced self-reflection. The gift of isolation that taught us the value of connection. The gift of exile that showed us the meaning of home. What do you want from us? High Chancellor Morden asked. Sarah's smile contained infinite patience. Nothing, she said. We want to give. We want to share what we've learned. We want to help you build something better than what existed before. And if we refuse, then you refuse, Sarah replied simply. We won't force anyone to accept our help. But we won't go away either. The galaxy is our home too, and we have work to do. She gestured again, and the projections changed to show the current state of council space with brutal honesty, infrastructure failures, environmental collapses, social tensions, economic instabilities that had... 6 months after first contact, the galaxy was transformed. The change didn't come through conquest or forced conversion. It came through choice, made one world at a time, one species at a time, one individual at a time. Humanity had returned to galactic civilization not as conquerors, but as gardeners, offering growth to those who wanted it and leaving others to find their own path. High Chancellor Morden stood in his private chamber, looking out at the renewed, crystal gardens of Zelos. The ancient formations that had been dying for centuries now pulsed with new life, their energy patterns enhanced by human technology that somehow made them more themselves rather than something different. The hegemony worlds have voted, Admiral Kethvar reported, entering the chamber with news that had become routine over the past months. They're joining the coalition. The coalition. That's what they called the new galactic organization that had grown around human influence. Not a government or empire, but something more organic. A network of worlds and species working together on projects that individual civilizations could never have accomplished alone. That makes 47 member species, Morden noted, more than the Council ever managed to unite. And they're doing it voluntarily, Kethvar added, still amazed by how quickly traditional political structures had become irrelevant. No treaties, no forced agreements, just beings choosing to work together because the results speak for themselves. Through his window, Morden could see one of those results. A human-designed orbital habitat hung in space above Zelos, home to 500,000 beings from a dozen different species. They lived together not because they had to, but because human architects had created spaces where different forms of life could thrive in harmony. The Krotar delegation wants to discuss joining as well, Kethvar continued. They're impressed by what humans have done with the asteroid mining operations in their territory. Morden nodded. He had seen the reports. Human mining technology didn't just extract resources from asteroids, it transformed the extraction process into something that created new habitable environments. Where once there had been lifeless rocks, now there were artificial ecosystems, serving as way stations for travelers and homes for species that preferred low-gravity environments. "What about the holdouts?" Morden asked. 37 species have chosen to maintain independence," Kethvar replied. "The humans respect their decision. They've been offered protection and trade agreements, but no pressure to join. That was, perhaps, the most remarkable thing about humanity's return. They seemed genuinely unbothered by rejection. Species that refused their offers were left alone, their territories respected, their sovereignty acknowledged. But they were also protected. Pirate attacks in independent systems stopped completely. Trade disputes were mediated fairly. Natural disasters received immediate humanitarian aid. They're not trying to rule us," Morden observed. "They're trying to help us rule ourselves better." A soft chime indicated an incoming communication. Dr. Yathara's image appeared, her tentacles vibrating with excitement. "Chancellor, you need to see this. The humans have made another breakthrough." The holographic display filled with images. From the Andromeda Research Station, a joint human council facility studying the possibilities of intergalactic travel. What Dr. Yathara showed him made Morden's crystalline form flicker with amazement. "They've solved the dark matter problem," Dr. Yathara explained. "Not just understood it, solved it. Dark matter isn't empty space, it's potential space. The humans have figured out how to activate it. The implications were staggering. Dark matter made up most of the universe, but had always been undetectable and unusable. If humans could activate it, transform it into usable space and energy, the universe itself became infinitely larger and more hospitable." "How long until practical applications?" Kethvar asked. "They're already building the first prototype vessels," Dr. Yathara replied. "Ships that can exist partially in dark matter space, traveling distances that would take millennia in normal spacetime." Morden closed the communication and turned back to his window. In the distance, he could see the construction scaffolding. For one of the new ships, its design so alien to traditional engineering that it looked more like a growing organism than a manufactured vehicle. "Are we making the right choice?" he asked Kethvar. "Allying ourselves so closely with a species that can casually rewrite the laws of physics?" Kethvar considered the question seriously. As a military leader, he had spent his career analyzing threats and capabilities. But humanity didn't fit into any traditional threat assessment. "They could have conquered us easily," he said finally. "They had infiltrated our society for decades. They possessed technology that made our defenses irrelevant. They could have taken control without firing a single shot. But they didn't." "No," Kethvar agreed. "Instead, they fixed our broken infrastructure, improved our failing systems, and offered to share knowledge that will benefit everyone. If that's conquest, it's the strangest form I've ever encountered." A new chime announced another visitor. Sarah Chen materialized in the chamber, not through any doorway, but simply appearing as space folded to accommodate her presence. Even after months of interaction, the casual way humans manipulated reality still unsettled most council members. "I hope I'm not interrupting," Sarah said, her appearance as unremarkable as always, despite the impossible nature of her arrival. "Never," Morden replied, and meant it. "What brings you to Zelos?" "Good news," Sarah smiled. "The first of the Galactic restoration projects is complete. We'd like to invite council observers to witness the results." The restoration projects. Humanity had identified dozens of star systems throughout the galaxy that were dying or damaged, and offered to repair them. Not terraforming in the traditional sense, but something far more sophisticated, reshaping reality itself to restore the natural order. "Which system?" Kethvar asked. "Zarion," Sarah replied. Both council members felt their hearts stop. Zarion had been the site of the galaxy's greatest disaster, a system-wide ecological collapse that had killed 12 billion beings 3 centuries ago. It had been written off as uninhabitable, a memorial to the dangers of uncontrolled industrial expansion. "You restored Zerion?" Morden whispered. "We restored Zerion," Sarah confirmed. 12 worlds, now thriving with life forms that evolved specifically to prevent the conditions that caused the original collapse. It will never face ecological disaster again. The journey to Zerion took 2 days aboard a human vessel that traveled through folded space-time. Morden and Kethvar were joined by representatives from dozens of species, all eager to witness what many considered impossible. What they found exceeded every expectation. Zerion Prime, the system's former capital world, had been a barren wasteland for 3 centuries. Now it bloomed with forests that sang in harmonious frequencies, oceans that sparkled with bioluminescent life, and cities that grew like living organisms while maintaining perfect balance with their environment. "The original population is being restored from genetic archives," Sarah explained as they toured the renewed world. "Not cloned, but reborn as part of family lines that volunteered for the project. They'll grow up in a world that's better than the one their ancestors lost." "How many will return?" asked Dr. Yathara. "All of them," Sarah replied simply. 12 billion beings, given a second chance at life in a system that will never fail them again. The delegation spent 3 days touring the restored Zerion system, seeing wonders that redefined their understanding of what was possible. Dying stars had been renewed with controlled fusion processes that would keep them burning for billions of years. Asteroid belts had been transformed into garden habitats. Gas giants now served as nurseries for new forms of life that existed in atmospheric environments. "This is what the Coalition offers," Sarah explained on their final day. "Not just membership in a political organization, but participation in projects that matter on cosmic scales. We're not trying to rule the galaxy. We're trying to heal it." As they prepared to return to Council space, Mordun made a decision that had been building for months. "Zelos formally requests admission to the Coalition," he announced. Sarah's smile contained depths of joy that seemed to encompass the entire galaxy. "Welcome home," she said. The transformation of galactic civilization accelerated after that. Species that had remained neutral began requesting Coalition membership. Independent worlds asked for assistance with projects beyond their capabilities. Even the most isolated civilizations began establishing diplomatic contact. Within a year, the old Galactic Council had evolved into something unprecedented. A truly cooperative civilization spanning thousands of worlds and millions of species. Humanity provided the advanced technology and organizational structures, but each species contributed their own unique capabilities and perspectives. The former enemies of humanity found themselves in positions of honor within the new order. The ethereal collective became the Coalition's philosophical advisors. The Krotar served as protectors of dangerous research projects. The Vorthans managed the complex logistics of interstellar cooperation. "We were afraid they would change us," Kethvar observed during one of the regular council meetings, now held in a space station that existed in